Good morning and welcome to this segment of Wealth and Finance. And we are going to be talking and delving a little bit deeper into critical issues around the economy. The African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, as we all know, is a historic agreement and aims to create a single market for goods, services across Africa. Now, as we know, by promoting inter-African trade, AfCFTA presents an immense opportunity for economic growth, job creation, and sustainable development. Captains of industry play a crucial role in realizing the full potential of AfCFTA and harnessing the benefits for business as well as for the communities across the region. And to delve deeper into this conversation this morning, I'm joined by CEO Africa Roundtable CEO Mr. Kipson Gundani, who's going to just enlighten us on the AfCFTA benefits as well as delve a little bit deeper on the annual roundtable, which brings together many countries in Africa to sit down and have the conversations in Victoria Falls. Now, Mr. Gundani, welcome to Wealth and Finance.
Thank you, Rumbi. Good morning.
Let me start off by getting into the crux of the matter. How has the implementation of AfCFTA influenced business operations and market access across the region? And particularly, are there any success stories that we can talk of?
So, Rumbi, the implementation is yet to seriously start. What has happened is 54 countries have signed the agreement and over 40 have ratified it. Ratified, it means going through the parliamentary approvals and so forth. The next step ordinarily would be now to commit on the tariff reduction or to commit on the tariff structure of each particular country, which is the stage they are into right now. I understand that Kenya, South Africa, Egypt are at the forefront of now trying to customize and reduce tariffs thereof. You also discover that in the implementation of these continental agreements, there is a principle that they apply which is called variable geometry, which says not all countries can go in at once. Those that are ready can start implementing. So I think it's still at very preliminary stages. And implementation is yet to holistically start. But from experiences, you discover that these trade agreements are not overnight shows. They take a long period of time. If you look at, for example, the European Union, it took them almost 72 years to be where they are today. So similarly, the Continental Free Trade Area obviously took many years for it to come to its full potential. But what is important was maybe to start and give a direction so that we owe it to future generations to come, that we create a better Africa, in Africa which is integrated in terms of trade, in terms of industry, in Africa which creates better jobs, in Africa which has set itself for a pedestal to grow.
Now, you mentioned some of the big economies in Africa. You're talking of Egypt, you're talking of South Africa, and you also spoke of Kenya. And we're looking at a setup where we have smaller economies that are probably bedeviled by issues of inflation, inconsistent policies, as well as very fragile economies.
Sure.
How do we harmonize? Because there are two different ends to talk of. How do we meet in the middle?
Precisely, I think that's one of the challenges that the CFTA is trying to address. It is because of the realization that African economies, one, they are very small. Two, they are very fragile. Three, they are over-reliant on natural commodities. All those, they depict fragilities of African economies, which I think could be resolved by getting into the Continental Free Trade Area, especially as you move up the ladder of integration to become a customs union, to become an economic union. Then it means you've got harmonized policies, you've got centrally coordinated policies. So it kind of allow the fragile economies to leverage on the bigger economies and also be cushioned from these other ills of economies like inflation, unemployment, and so forth. One of the pillars of the Continental Free Trade Area is the free movement of people. So with the free movement of people, it means it allows you to explore opportunities elsewhere in the continent. So I think it's a panacea. I see it as a solution to the challenges that you've just highlighted.
Right. So we are having this conversation on the backdrop of yet another successive engagement, which you as CEO Africa Roundtable led. This is the engagement with the Atlanta Black Chamber. And now we're getting to a conversation where it's regionally focused, which is the annual roundtable. This has become the culture where leaders come together, sit down and have this conversation. I want to find out from you, what are the key aspects that this annual roundtable, that CEO Africa Roundtable is going to be pushing this particular time?
Sure, thank you, Rumbi. We've got an obligation as a CEO's Roundtable to keep industry leaders conscious of developments that are happening around the world. We've just been talking about the Continental Free Trade Area. It's one of them. But you discover that there are other many emerging issues. For example, artificial intelligence is now here and here to stay. And as a leader that leads a progressive and an organization that will live in posterity, you need to be conscious and integrate yourself in that area. We'll also be talking about these geopolitical shifts, which obviously affect trade patterns and affects the well-being of economies. And as a leader in business, you have to be conscious about that, not leaving issues to do with climate change. Now we are really reeling from the El Nino-induced drought. Its implications are far-reaching, even in sectors that are non-agricultural. So these are the things that we'll be discussing about, but not only discussing about them, but also trying to find solution and how do we mitigate against them. How do you prepare for the future in the event that there's a recurrent of this kind of misnomers? But more importantly, I think the main highlight of the roundtable is you are coming there to meet fellow executives, and you need to come there holding something, because we'll be emphasizing deals. It's a platform where you come to sell, to make deals, and to meet your industry peers in one room, and be able to have a wonderful time there.
Right. I think in the past few weeks, or let me say in the first quarter of the year, there are a lot of institutions that have been really keen on coming up with strategic partnerships with local organizations in Zimbabwe. I'm talking of the European Union. They have the private sector dialogue engagement. We're now talking of ZITF, and we're talking of foreign exhibitors that are coming through. Earlier on, we also, in March, we had the UNECA, which was the meeting of the ministers of finance. And we are getting also to the SADC region, where they're also aiming, our Ministry of Industry and Commerce is going to be spearheading the SADC Industrial Week. Now, given all the engagements that you have had, which are the key priority industries that you feel when you sit down to have conversations, there are fundamental elements that need to be addressed so that these industries can thrive?
Well, thank you, Rumbi. I think 2024 has been a very opportune year. You mentioned one of the major events that Zim hosted, by virtue of its one assuming the chairmanship of UNECA Council of Ministers, and also assuming SADC chairmanship later in August, hence the SADC Industrial Week. But now looking at the Zim in particular, given all these opportunities, I think the major question or the major homework that we need to deal with in Zimbabwe is how do we move up the value chain. You discover that if you look, for example, at our export figures, you discover that 5 of our major exports are primary commodities. That doesn't do us any favor. How do we move up that value chain? So as we prepare for the SADC Industrialization Week, let's think, how do we industrialize and industrialize as a country? Because it is only when we industrialize that we begin to get quality jobs and we begin to realize increased incomes for our people. I think that is key. More importantly, I think how do we also get technology transfer into the country. So as we engage with the European Union, as we engage with China, as we engage with the Americas, I think it is important that as we structure the deals that primarily allows for technological transfer into the country, so that manufacturing and whatever production happens here, and we get to export finished or semi-finished products. I think that should be the million-dollar question for Zimbabwe on its industrialization path.
A lot of people are looking at the annual table as a precursor of what we can prepare for in terms of discussions when we get to August, which is the SADC Industrial Week. I want to find out from you, how many countries in Africa are going to be part of the annual roundtable?
We're expecting about 9 countries. You might be aware that we are now officially registered in 5 countries. That is Zimbabwe, Malawi, Zambia, Botswana, and Rwanda. But we have also reached out to other peers in East Africa, in particular DRC, Uganda, Kenya, and we are hoping to get delegates coming from all those countries. So we are true in spirit that we want to bring private sector leaders into one, so that at least we can begin to discuss critical things, but more importantly, create smart partnerships that can allow us to be a real player in these global developments.
Quite constantly, you mentioned the private sector and their key role in the development agenda. And a lot of the times when we have such discussions, some key emergings that the policies are not very favorable to the private sector being part of the development agenda. What's your take on that?
Sure, that is very true. You discover that the architecture of Africa is very colonial, all right? It has been an architecture of them and us, all right? So I think you begin to see private sector being consulted on a more regular basis in country and also regionally. For example, if we go to Africa, there's the Africa Business Council, which is recognized in the treaty that established the Continental Free Trade Area. If you also look here in Zimbabwe in particular, I think there are a number of private sector bodies which are very active in the policy-making space. But obviously, there are some instances where we feel the consultation is not great enough and more can still be done. But I think it's a better place than it was yesteryears, and surely improvement is a possibility.
For me, one of the highlights of the annual roundtable was when you managed to bring in Professor Lumumba.
Sure, yeah.
What can we look forward to this year?
So this is actually more interesting in my view. We are bringing interesting characters. We are hoping that former president of South Africa will come, Thabo Mbeki. We are still working on it to speak about the geopolitical shifts and the African Renaissance. We are hoping that we should be able to get Wamkele Mene from the Continental Free Trade Area, Chileshe Chipwepwe from COMESA. But more importantly, our humorous president will also be there. We had very great time with him last year, and we hope to have also great time with him last year. And one of the major highlights of last year was the currency reforms, which he listened and implemented. So I think it is going to be an interesting issue, and the conference is actually going to happen in 2 countries, in Botswana and Zimbabwe. So some of the programs will be in Vic Falls, and some will be across the border in Chobe. So it will be an exciting one. We are also going to put these CEOs in a bus to go all the way to Chobe. Now, these are guys who are used to be driving their VXs and their S-classes. We'll put them in a bus so that they can network and have a feel of yesteryear life when they're still in the village. Sure. Yeah.
That's a wonderful innovation, revisiting your past so that you can build on that, because at some point we all need our history for us to be able to give a trajectory of what the future looks like.
Precisely.
Now, we've just been researching and reading around, and we just want to find out the dates of the annual table and the theme that it's going to be running under.
So, 12 to 15 June in Victoria Falls and Chobe. The theme is the future of Africa, reshape, modernize, and grow. The whole idea is to grow the spirit. Let's grow as Africa. Let's dare to dream. The time is now.
And one of the key issues are His Excellency, President Emerson Dambudzo Mnangagwa, is going to be a key guest for that particular roundtable. And we also have our very own Minister of Industry and Commerce, Mangaliso Ndlovu, who's going to be part of that discussion. So somebody might have the question, when we look at the panel, we only have one female who's coming through for us.
No. We do not have one female. We've got many female speakers. Unfortunately, we cannot advertise them because they've not yet confirmed. And maybe this is a call to women executives out there. It's your platform. We are equal partners. Please get in touch with us if you're interested in sharing some insights on artificial intelligence, on property development, on renewable energy, on the continental fruit. We are looking for you. Where are you? Come.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kipson Gundani, for joining me for this segment of Wealth and Finance. It's been quite an interesting discussion. And when we talk of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, we're talking of an estimated 1.4 billion market in terms of its size, and over trillions, thousands and thousands of trillions of dollars that are going to be traded at intra-regional level. And that will ensure that developing economies like Zimbabwe are catapulted to the next level. But all this is done when there is a public-private partnership. That means private sector coming together with government to work on key policy issues that drive industry and development. My name is Rumbidai Mashayanya. It has been a pleasure. Until next Monday, where we give you more business news.